Welcome to the legendary Ben and Ryan show.
Yo, yo.
Welcome. We have John Nessum with us this week. And John, did I get that last name right?
American way is Nessum, but the common way is Nassim.
Nassim, okay.
Yeah.
I always tell myself I'm going to check before we start recording, and I'm probably 0 for 12.
You did it good. Perfect.
But we're here to talk about different CMS options for people, including some CFML ones for all you CF fans.
Mm-hmm.
And then some bonus footage. We're going to kind of dive a little more into accessibility. We had a recent episode where we talked to a senior director from Verizon about accessibility, and we're going to go into a little bit more, maybe at a different angle. So guys, welcome to the show. And we're going to go ahead and start. John, why don't you give a little intro about who you are, kind of a little bit of history so people know kind of where you're coming from.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and see and be part of this amazing show. I was born and raised in Egypt. Background, over my head so people can see my background.
It's a cool background.
Pyramids of Egypt, and this is the Capitol building in Washington D.C. So this is where my mind and heart are. I've started to code at the age of 13, and since then I fell in love with logic. Programming is my muse. It's my fun thing to do. And since then, I got hooked. I started to write software and learn a lot of programming languages and got exposed to the web development. My dream was to be a database person, data mining, they used to call it back in the days. But since I started to write HTML, there was something magical about it. It's the logic meets creativity. Okay, both part of the brain fighting together, trying to get something out on a blank page. And since then, I've been doing that. I started web development 1998, back in the days at college, and been doing it since.
Nice.
Cool.
Nice. And I threw this term out there in the very beginning for CMS, but for our listeners and watchers out there, CMS is content management system. So it's kind of the backbone of many websites out there, kind of how they control what pages and images and everything that goes up there. So John, Ben, you're going to jump in here?
Well, I guess this is probably going to dovetail with whatever you were going to ask John just now. But if you think about, there are many ways in which someone can put data into a database and then render data onto a screen for a user. And sometimes you don't even need a database if it's something like a static site generator. Is there a kind of bar that you think you have to meet where something is considered a content management system as opposed to maybe just like data management or site generation? Like what in your mind is the fundamental properties and behaviors of a content management system?
Nice. So I would go back and ask the million-dollar question. What was the need for a CMS to begin with?
I assume it was to enable non-technical users to put content on the web.
Bingo. And give them more control instead of calling the developer and say, hey, we need to get this page on the website. We need to get this content off the website and so on. They give them some sense of control. And the way I saw or witnessed the progression of CMS, it's amazing. Like there was a burst of need. We need some control. We don't need developer. We need to have something in place. Early on was custom CMSs where developers trying to huddle together to bring a sense of it. Of course, you're laughing, Ben. How many CMSs you built, Ben?
It gets very blurry because a lot of stuff that I've built is kind of data management for lawyers, but it's not fancy stuff. I mean, it was more like case management. But I think about some of the CMSs that we see today where it's rich text editors and like block editors. And I don't know the right terminology for all this stuff because I'm not really part of this world, but I never built anything that is nearly as robust as I think a lot of the things are today.
Okay. I believe that the CMS was created to help non-tech people, like what Ben said, to put something on the internet. It was initially was to build templates, like this. This is the about page. This is the content for the about page, and this is the content for, let's say, services page. And then came the need out of it to have like sense of structure. Like if I'm going to list my services, I need to have them in a structured way, and then the front end is going to handle how the structure is going to be displayed. Like, for example, the case management, or that type of services, or the schedule, the events, and so on. So right off a template page for just some text and pictures on top of each other, there was a need to display some structured data like events and have them searchable and so on, enable that event, or this event has expired, or this product is no longer in market or in storage on inventory. Let me just flag it, hide it from the front end, and so on. The spectrum of need of CMS have changed in a way that now CMSs they're coming back to no need. I'm done with my need for a template, and I need a way to structure my data in a way that you hear the term right now, headless CMS. When we heard of headless CMS, why do I need headless CMS? It's practically a database with an interface. And now you see that happening. Like recently, I'm working on a couple of projects that mainly headless CMS. So now we're coming back to instead of database query to.
Can you take a minute and define headless CMS for those listening, watching?
A headless CMS is basically a way of managing blocks of information instead of template. Like back to the example of about page, instead of putting everything in just one page and one template and send it to the front end. No, you structure the data in content chunks or content blocks. And this content block gets serviced either on a website or a mobile app or a watch or a car dashboard. So now there's an engineering to the content piece, not just a lump sum or a block of template, pre-designed page that you get to spit out on a browser. No, you engineer the content blocks in paragraphs, or how granular you want to be. Like going back to the example of schedule, you send, instead of sending HTML to, technically speaking, you're sending some JSON object or XML through an API call. So now we are engineering the headless CMS is a way to organize your content blocks in a controlled fashion.
Now, WordPress, I guess, would be the largest CMS out there.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
Probably by far. I don't. Or do they have this headless option?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes, and you can use React or Next.js to connect to those headless instances of WordPress too.
Interesting.
It's very interesting, Ben.
I guess that would have hosting implications, or I should say it could have hosting implications, where maybe you could have a managed host or, a managed platform as a service provide the headless CMS, and then you could either host your front end as almost a static site that's just making API calls, or host it as just a thinner backend service that's just acting almost like a proxy to the headless CMS.
Yeah. So you see where the circle is coming back again. So early on, there was like the database piece built by a developer, and then a front end piece built by maybe another developer or the same one, and everything is meshed together in a one block of HTML that's coming to the front end. Okay, client server model. And then with the progression and the need of new separation of interest and more clients to serve. So the data is not just servicing the website, they're serving a mobile app and different other pieces of content and social media posts and so on. They're coming back to the engineering aspect of it, but instead of asking the developer to build it, you can have a no-code experienced person who can organize or structure data to build it on a headless CMS. And instead of building it through programming, Cold Fusion, and CF queries, no, you build it through API calls and you render it and you react to it then. Like through React.
So question on where do you draw the line then as far as, and what do you recommend to customers? Do they go headless or do they go more traditional CMS when they're designing for their options?
That's a very good question. I'll tell you what, it depends on the type of the business need and the client, the customer. Okay, if I am building a website for a doctor who wants only to treat patients, okay, they're gonna have a staff. There's some of them are gonna be tech savvy, others don't, and they will want to have me build a website. But in their mind, I'm a vendor and I could be replaced at any time, but the website is going to remain for them as an asset. Those are never going to think of headless or anything. They just need something that is popular, something they've heard the other guy having it, and something that just serves the website aspect of the business. And the short answer to all that is WordPress.
Now, would you say that is a site like Wix or Squarespace, are those considered CMSs, or is that kind of a different breed of application?
It's a different breed, and this is what they call website builder. It's a CMS by nature, but it's a website builder that comes with more of a, I would put it this way, it's a very controlled environment, very limiting, controlled environment, and they consider the two aspects. A, the security, and B is the responsiveness, like how the responsiveness, which means that how the website is going to render on smaller devices like a mobile device or a tablet versus a computer screen. I'll give you a specific example I have in my company. I would give the client a choice. You want to build a website using GoDaddy Website Builder, or you want to use WordPress. And of course, I have to explain why this versus that, and how they're going to benefit, what's the cost coming with that, and what's the implications. Costs, definitely GoDaddy is going to be cheaper because it's a very controlled environment, and you don't get to have a lot, but you get to have a nice website. It's going to be responsive right off the bat. You don't need to worry about responsiveness. I'm saying GoDaddy because others that might be a worrisome when it comes to responsiveness, but they just say GoDaddy for now. You can drag this information blocks and fill it up with it, replace the default lorem ipsum text, upload your images, and you're a happy camper. You have a website with clickable links and such. Is it limited? Of course, limited compared to a full-fledged WordPress where you can have plugins. And this is what
millions of plugins.
Oh, tell me about it. And plugins can do there's a plugin for that. The joke is now there's an AI for that. There's a plugin for that. But
I mean, I would say that's probably like both the good and the bad thing about WordPress, because you talk about something like a Wix or a GoDaddy being very constrained. So there's a certain level of quality, let's call it, that they're going to guarantee. And the moment you can start to just install anybody's WordPress plugin, and I'm speaking from what I've heard, not from what I've experienced myself here, but like you could have a plugin that radically slows down your site or breaks it in some way or does something, unintended because you just didn't know how it worked, or you didn't know how caching worked, or et cetera, et cetera.
Do you see why I'm nodding?
Yeah.
Because all of it is just true. And let me add one small thing. A plugin could be doing amazing things right now, and when they push the new version of it and you get to update the latest version of it, it slows the website. Hence the need of re-optimizing things again. That's the case of WordPress. There are other content management systems that I love and I adore, that they have this middle ground that you can deal with it as it's not headless, technically not headless, but you can treat it as headless a little bit with a little bit of knowledge of code or a little more. Like Mura CMS, for example, built Cold Fusion based. It was a beautiful one. I worked with a company that built like tens, not even hundreds of that. It was a beautiful thing. You can have multi-site on it, which actually my company's website was built with Mira early on, because I had the English one, the French one, and the Arabic one, and so on, all multi-site, all in one under one instance. It was a beautiful one. And then they said, okay, we are putting a lot of free stuff into the market. We're going to monetize on that 10K a license and such.
Oh, okay. This is that CMS. Is this the one that was then forked into a different CMS right before they closed sourced it?
Again, 100% correct. It was forked to MASA, or MASA, which is like, I think it was a fork from version 7.1 or 7. But by all means, that was a beautiful thing. Why? Because it was built by developers, and you have this piece of pieces in the back end in the CMS itself. This is the excerpt part, this is the title part, and this is the body part. And then you, from code, you can get those pieces out of it.
So I have a question on Masa. Now, do you still work with Masa?
No, I moved on to WordPress because I moved to the business aspect. I was the only Cold Fusion guy in my business. I trained another developer to write Cold Fusion, but we know the stigma around Cold Fusion, and he was able to work with the Mira for a bit, and then I had to move faster than teaching someone Cold Fusion or hiring somebody to do Cold Fusion. And they've been building WordPress day and night, and he said, why don't switch to WordPress? And since then I have this thing in my heart. It's like, oh my God, I betrayed my own. You're laughing, but it's true. Once you go Cold Fusion, it does something to your brain. It goes so easy, so powerful, no bugs, no hacks, And
yeah, it's pretty great. But at the end of the day, you have to deliver value to your customers.
True.
So whatever gets that done.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question, because when I was early on in my career and we were working on these legal data management systems, we had used this. It was like not a Java applet. It was, what was the one that IEX, like ActiveX? It was an ActiveX plugin.
Oh yes,
called X Standard, and it was kind of a what you see is what you get. WYSIWYG editor, and you could bold and apply CSS classes. And then I had moved on from that world, and I had discovered Markdown, or I guess Markdown was created, and then it suddenly felt like, oh, Markdown just makes content creation so much easier because it simplifies. There's a lot of constraints, but it allows you to do some formatting. And in my mind, I believe that everyone would love Markdown, but I have to imagine that's really just developers.
Only the nerds.
Yeah, okay. Only the nerds love Markdown. Is it still WYSIWYG editors in the content management world? Is that the main kind of interaction?
Of course. However, they have it advanced way more than just a regular rich text editor. Because back in the days, the client who used to add content to the website, they needed everything. Give me a text editor that looks like Word document. I need to do not just bold and italics. No, I need to do everything else on earth. Right. I need some. I've extended some rich text editors to include magic tags that includes like Dear John and such. Contact name or a person name or another piece of another content that magically gets inserted in the
I see what you're saying.
Front end. However, since Markdown had been used, and with React and the new JavaScript players, they happen to love Markdown more than anything. There's Markdown editors now, like for example. Nowadays, I'm working with a headless CMS called Strapi, which is an open source headless CMS.
I think I just heard of it recently.
Yeah, it's a good one. If you would ask me, I would love Sanity more, but Sanity comes with a price. And they give you the option. If you want to write Markdown, you write Markdown. If you want to write just basic text, call it text. It has minimum of bold and italics, like safe. Front end safe thing, or you just want to go crazy and do your own rich text editor. and insert images and such things. However, with the new trajectory of the content, I think they want to make it more granular, even in rich text, because in rich text you could include content of an entire page in it.
Yeah.
And it's not into the mindset of headless, because headless, they need more granular blocks of content.
Well, and one thing to consider here is the security aspects of it. And, I, in my personal workflow for my own content, I use Markdown, and then that Markdown gets parsed into HTML using a Java library. And then the Java, and then the HTML gets sanitized using another Java library. So, I mean, this has nothing to do with the CMS, but I use something called FlexMark to convert the Markdown to HTML, and I use JSoup is another Java library too.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, JSoup's pretty great.
I love JSoup. Every Cold Fusion developer loves JSoup.
Oh, it's so fantastic. It's so fantastic. For those listening, JSoup is kind of like a jQuery on the server, but one of the nice things that you can do is you can give it a kind of an allow list of elements and attributes. So if you have content and someone's just pasting a whole bunch of markup into it, you can say only allow bold tags and italics tags and paragraphs and headers, and like strip out tables and, script tags and all this stuff. I imagine that in the CMS world, this is also a big concern, that you have to, if anything, just handhold people. Like, you don't want them to be able to shoot themselves in the foot. Is there some sense of content sanitization, and like, can that be configured to allow or not allow certain things?
Yes, this is a very good point. We always think of who's the user persona of my system. It could be like in the admin, an editor, or an SEO specialist. You call it like that. The users of any CMS system, you got to give them roles. So if somebody's an admin, I will give the admin more than a regular user. Like, for example, the comment box, you have on your own blog post, somebody can go in and write a comment on your blog piece. I would put this as the highest risk piece of content.
Yes.
You know why?
I had to move it behind moderation a couple of years ago.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because people are going to try to expose that and do a lot of nasty stuff.
Yeah. So many people in Russia selling Viagra.
Of course. And go and visit my website. I built this awesome thing. Do you want to hop on the boat of backlinking? Stay on your shoulder for that, for as long as it takes. So yes, if I'm engineering a content management system piece, like a rich text editor for users, I would know what are the limitations that I should impose first. So, and I work with the elimination list. Like, for example, everything is denied, and then I would allow piece by piece. If I'm doing it for the front end audience, like a user, or hopefully never a guest, like somebody without a sign in, right, I would not allow them to put any content, because this is danger. This is bots, mainly bots, not even human. But I would put that to the bare minimum, as you were talking a second ago, Ben. Like, can only bold or italics, or not even underline, because it's misleading on the internet.
Oh yeah, good point.
Yeah, but if it's an admin, what's your role in the back end when it comes to content? If you're an SEO person, no, you don't get to have anything like that. You can handle the H1 and H2s, but no, don't come and botch my content strategy, please.
How can I make this text white and 8 pixels?
But yeah, exactly. White. True. You know what? This is a penalty thing for Google. White on white. No. Been too long.
But I mean, SEOs. I mean, they're having to go in and edit content nowadays. I mean,
Yes, yeah, it's a legit thing. But again, you see, when you say edit content, it means what I will allow them to use. So can they have the right to make H1, like the headings, H1 and H2 and H3, because they're gonna need that. They need to make bold part of the words in bold. But what else do they need? Linking? Yes, they can link, but with a limitation. Of course, an SEO person is has his or her heart on your thing, so they're gonna try to make it right. So when you give them allow to linking, I would limit only to internal linking, not external linking. Means like you
Oh,
link to
interesting.
a page that on the website, not something external. And external linking gives you benefits too, but it has to be moderated. Versus an admin, like a person who runs the show when it comes, or a content manager or an editor, I allow everything. That's their show.
Now, do the commercial systems, like a WordPress out there, by default, do they have those controls in there, in that granular controls? No. So you've got to step in and you have your own. Do you have your own WordPress plugins then that do that, or?
No, they allow everything, because remember, this is template-based CMS. They need to make everything in there, to put everything. They design the page, the final version of the page. You don't design the content per se. They design the whole thing, the whole page. There's no engineering behind it. Yeah, the only concept of engineering is like, okay, I'm going to have 3 sections of the page. The top section, we're going to call it hero. And then the second one is going to be like social proof. So I'm going to drag a lot of logos. This is what the concept of engineering. But when you move on to fast forward to headless CMS, this is a whole different animal. And everything is going to be API response. So there's no HTML in API response. It's going to be JSON.
Well, okay. Let me ask this though, because if you think about a content management system, has 2 surfaces. There's the consumer surface. You know, here's the content that someone put in the database, and then there's an administrative surface where people are going in and organizing the content. With a headless CMS, is there still an administrative UI that they are essentially hosting for you, or is that also something you have to build for the headless experience?
So far, this something that you have to build.
Gotcha. Okay, so they're really treating it as like an API.
An API, yes. So far, yes. There might be a super advanced headless CMSs over there that you need to log in, and you don't get to get your content published right away. You need someone else with a higher authority to approve that or moderate that. But I haven't seen that yet. Not in Strapi. No.
So you're building you're going with Strapi if you're going headless? Is that what you're saying? Is that your recommendation?
Not recommendations. It's a flavor that I like. It's a headless CMS flavor. Sanity would give you the chance to make the content manager in a better place. Like it has this labels and placeholders, and it makes content editing fun or appeasing.
Okay.
Strapi is trying to do that, but if you get my take on it, I would say Sanity, because there's more money spent on it.
Yeah, I hear them advertise on a lot of podcasts, Sanity CMS. So clearly there's money in it for them.
Yep, and it's translated into nicer interfaces for admins, content admins.
Let me ask you this. I've heard the term Gutenberg block editing for years, and because I'm not part of WordPress, is that like, can you just tell me more about what that is, and then 2, is it a WordPress specific thing, or is it more generic? Like JSX is part of React, but it's not really part of React. Like you can use JSX with other things in theory. Is Gutenberg like that?
Yes, Gutenberg is basically the people who built WordPress and maintaining WordPress. I call it the PHP gang. Okay? They are, because I'm Cold Fusion. Hey, we're Cold Fusion gangs, and they kicked us in the guts, market-wise. But back to your point, Gutenberg is a way that is a mean for the people who built WordPress to give the WordPress builders, the WordPress developers, a way to make them build nice pieces of content without the need to learn any code. So WordPress was a CMS, but you need to understand what HTML is. Now you don't even need to understand what HTML is to begin with, because you have other content builders underneath WordPress. Part of it is Elementor, part of it is Divi, part of it is Gutenberg content block.
Okay. So instead of having like one master template for a particular page, you might have a series of blocks, and then each of those blocks is it just static text, or can you have like dynamic blocks that pull in like a list of upcoming events or something?
You would need a developer to set up this aspect for you. Like, for example, if I manage events, or I manage services, and I want to have each service that has with a structure on each page, like a service name, like as in a title, and an excerpt, and then a description, and then a photo, and what's involved in there, like an FAQ at the end of it. You get to build this framework or structure by a developer, and then when you click to add, you go to the back end of WordPress. You want to add, you see services and add new service. You would automatically see the boxes where you fill it in.
Gotcha. Okay.
Closest thing.
And then each one of those boxes that's an individual kind of Gutenberg block.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
I haven't done a lot of Gutenberg. I've only seen it in clients for websites that I inherited from other developers when the clients sign up with me. So I would see, oh, that was built with Gutenberg. Let me get rid of that and use Divi.
Okay. So not Elementor then.
You want to get my take about Elementor specifically?
Hot take. Yeah. Do it.
I have a hot take. And I got to speak out for all the business owners that I help build their websites. Elementor is the big guy when it comes to building an interface using WordPress. Okay, content builder. It has only one caveat, and I don't blame the Elementor people. I thank them for having this nice WYSIWYG with a structured elements and things that you can really build magic with it. I blame the developer for the license. So if I'm building a website for a client, they're gonna, hey John, I need a website. This is it for them. They don't want to be dragged to a license or this or that.
Right.
I've seen it when somebody say, John, my developer disappeared off the face of the earth, and you get to hear that a lot. Unfortunately, I'm not a fan of this statement, but it is what it is. And you get a website with plugins, because WordPress has plugins, runs on plugins. And guess one of these plugins is Elementor Pro. And Elementor Pro needs a license. So a proper handover is to, hey, Ryan, I built your website. It's WordPress based, and I'm a fan of Elementor, so I'm going to install the free version of it. But because you want fancy stuff, I'm going to get the pro version. But you're going to have to pay probably $100 a year, something like that. So if I didn't give you the upfront, eventually you're going to get stuck with a non-updatable Elementor plugin.
Interesting.
And then you get the sluggishness that's going to occur because the plugin, and it's going to be, eventually it's going to be a disaster, a security disaster, because you have a plugin lingering there that you cannot update.
So I have a WordPress question for you, because I've, in various roles, I've done different WordPress pages. Mm-hmm. And my biggest issue with WordPress is the bloat, where your HTML, I mean, your divs are like 8 deep, and trying to do any kind of CSS on your own is crazy.
Yes.
And you're banging your head like, this is just, what's your, do you have any tricks for people on how to deal with the bloat, or do you just kind of live with it if you want WordPress?
Well, everything comes with its own baggage. Remember, WordPress has evolved to get rid of developers, and they got punished for that. Okay? Because why you need a WYSIWYG? Because you don't need to deal with a developer to begin with. And then when you don't need to deal with a developer and you need to build a lot of stuff, we have to think granular, and we have div inside a div inside a div, and we need to guarantee responsiveness. And this is where you get a lot of things that you don't have control over. Even as a developer, why you're exposing my categories? I don't want to expose that. You see, now you have to think beyond just building a website. And trust me, when we build a website, we have a lot of under the hood works that a lot of work under the hood compared to what you see. Because we need to lock down a lot of things too. So when you say it's bloated, there's no way around that because they asked for it and this is what they get. I'm not, we're laughing about it. I laugh too, but this is the reality of it. And this is where they're going to touch to a point that Ben mentioned way earlier about the headless. Why people are now talking headless? Because they get tired of the same thing you mentioned right now, and they need to get back to the control. Because at the end of the day, we're servicing information in bytes, in a header or a heading, or in a paragraph that defines this piece, or in a list of events that you want to display on the front end. Hence, the API call that brings you the raw data, and then you get to get a developer, again, back to the developer, and they get to build it using React or any technology that can consume API response.
I was listening to an interview, I can't remember, this is quite a while ago, and I don't know if this is a common thing. I get the sense it is not, but I heard someone say that they had developed a system where it was a GitHub repository, and they gave their clients access to GitHub, and they could go in and edit markdown files. And then I think it did some sort of like CI/CD system where that would then publish somewhere. And like talk about only developers liking markdown. I can't imagine it was easy to train someone to go into GitHub and edit a markdown file and create a pull request. It feels like the nerdiest of the it was fascinating to hear, but I can't imagine anyone actually would enjoy it.
I would never do that. But I think there is something might be called GitHub site. Because everything has a website right now. You buy a CMS, you buy a CRM, and then part of it is a website. Have you heard of that too?
I don't know too much about CRMs.
HubSpot, for example.
Yeah.
You get a HubSpot license or even a free. I think you need to pay a little bit for HubSpot so you can have a HubSpot site.
Yeah, well, and they throw the domain registration in as well.
Of course. See, now the website has lost its commodity right now because I have other systems, and out of it I can get a website. Sure.
So what's John's list? So someone's coming to you for a website. If they want they just want something down and dirty, hey, WordPress. When do you start recommending other things, and what are the things that you recommend, just so that we can kind of so that the takeaway for this part of the segment is to, hey, here's John's recommendations. We'll cut this out into a little short video. John's recommendations. Here we go.
I love this piece. Okay, so back in the days when I was just a developer, not in the business world, running my own thing, I would say, okay, let me build you something amazing with Mura CMS, and then we need to pay for Cold Fusion hosting and such. But now I ask a whole different question. Oh yeah, it makes sense, right? I ask a whole different question right now. I ask, what's the purpose of the website? To begin with, if you are a coach, a life coach, or a business coach, what would be the purpose of the website for you?
To sell your stuff, customer acquisition. Correct.
And then how do we technically define a customer acquisition? Is either they submit a form, like a lead, it's called a lead, and then they're either going to submit a form or be on your calendar. Okay, or pick up the phone or send me an email. This is the simplest thing. So inherently, a website starts with one purpose, which is web presence. It tells people who you are and what you do. This is a whole different aspect. But if this is the bare minimum definition of a purpose of the website, I recommend using a GoDaddy website builder. And I've done this with a friend of mine who is a coach, and the website is amazing, is doing amazing to the business. It's serving its purpose. Why? That guy can log into GoDaddy, and GoDaddy website builder is easy to deal with. Hey, why not give you a good example? I have received a call from an 80 years old developer who built a nice system for prescription for elder people to handle prescription. Okay, and he wants the website, and his answer to the purpose of the website was like, I want people to know about it, can find it on Google, and also to call me. So the call to action is to call him, period.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to get the website up and running with my help. I gave him like 5 hours of consulting. And then now he's managing his own website on GoDaddy Website Builder, and can go in and add a section, add a page, change the background color, and the whole 9 yards. He's
Nice.
a happy camper. And this is the least expensive entry to having a website. But it's limiting, because limiting when it comes to SEO, limiting when it comes to a lot of other aspects too. Would it have an aspect on accessibility? No, because you can include an accessibility. But if you want to do real SEO work, real accessibility work, real optimization, and go beyond just static pages, now we're talking about a full-fledged CMS, not a website builder. So
Right.
we start with WordPress because everybody knows WordPress, and I can be replaced as an agency by another one. Same thing with WordPress without having to redo the website, because it's WordPress, everybody knows about it.
Let me ask you about the editability of WordPress, because it's such a black box for me. When I'm saying in air quotes here, install WordPress, because I don't actually even know what that means.
Yeah.
Is it literally like you get a Git repository of
Nope.
PHP files?
No. Please take off your developer, hat right now, and think of somebody who wants to start a business. And when you buy a domain name, you would get a WordPress website on top of it.
But
No.
where does it exist? I don't, can you see the files? I have no idea.
Here's how it happens, my friend.
Okay.
There's WordPress.com and there's WordPress.org. Okay, I'm not promoting to WordPress here at all.
Yeah.
I'm at core a Cold Fusion developer who loves, to build his own things. But WordPress has been doing a huge favor to business owners and a huge disfavor to developers who are building it, because they need to try to protect it all the time. There's the WordPress.com where you don't have to do anything. Then you just go to WordPress.com, create an account, build a website, connect your own domain, and you're a happy camper.
So there's a fully hosted, like fully managed
Correct.
system. Okay.
Correct.
But
You can get access to the files.
Like someone can host their own WordPress is what
Yes, and that's where you go to WordPress.org, download the most recent WordPress version, or you don't even have to do that right now. You go to a hosting company, WordPress hosting company like WP Engine, Hostinger, or any non-developer hosting businesess. Okay, they host for developers too, but it's mainly PHP technologies.
Right.
And this is I'm gonna connect the dots where when we started this podcast earlier on, when you said, a headless CMS, so what am I going to do with the hosting thing? I'm going to connect the dots at this point. So you go to a WP Engine, for example, or even GoDaddy, and you said, I want to have a WordPress hosting service. Say, okay, pick your package, and then once you get the package, like start your website. You click a button, and poof, the WordPress instance installed for you. They give you a username and password for the admin, and now you are a WordPress developer.
Yeah, I will say, because we have some WordPress.com, or I've worked with them in the past. Even on WordPress.com, you still can add your own PHP code.
No,
WordPress.com
is very limited and it's on purpose because of the security aspect. And no, not a lot of website builders can be used on WordPress.com. Definitely not a lot of plugins can be used on WordPress.com because they are adamant when it comes to security, which is a big issue in the WordPress world.
Yeah, for sure. So wait, Ryan, are you saying that you've had things that were hosted on WordPress.com, or you got them?
I'm pretty sure that our stuff is WordPress.com. We have a portion of our website which I believe is on WordPress.com, and they have a section where you can plug in PHP code.
PHP code on WordPress.com. There could be a thing. I've only helped on one website on WordPress.com, and I saw tons of limitations. Even the templates that the client loved was not even allowed. The theme that the client loved
really
was not even allowed. No, it was not allowed. No, because
maybe this is just maybe I just don't realize it because I'm not managing that piece. I have a team who manages my infrastructure.
Here's the thing
at Expedite Cloud, but yeah. So maybe ours is hosted. Maybe ours is more WordPress.org then. I just don't know it. I could be one of your uninformed marketers.
No, wait. Maybe you meant that you can write HTML on WordPress.com because there's
no.
Okay,
Did
so
not
if
mean
it's
that.
PHP, I doubt they would allow that because you can wreak havoc over there with PHP because you're there now.
Yeah.
Maybe you can control some commands, but I'm not sure. So my answer is like I don't know.
We had such a horror story on our end back when InVision was running. The public blog ran on a WordPress install that was on Bluehost, I think is what it was called.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can get her. It's okay. Sorry. Just get my dog. And this is no shade thrown at Bluehost, but the site used to crash all the time. And I think it was always because the CPU was running at like 100%. And they'd always have to scramble to install some sort of new caching plugin. And the frustrating thing for me is because I'm a developer, in my mind, I'm like, it's static content. You're just pulling records out of a database. Like I can't even fathom what is spiking your CPU at 100%. But it was just an ongoing battle for us. Every couple of months, the whole blog would just crash and become unresponsive.
I'll tell you what it is. Because it frustrates me too, especially when you work with the big CMS like Mura CMS. You know, CMSs by nature, each refresh runs tons of queries because they need to collect everything out of the database, and also a lot of things surrounding what's in the database, like global definitions and site and such and security.
Gotcha.
Permissions and everything. This comes with WordPress 2 or any CMS, period. However, CMS, because it's an open source, it's a very good, playground for hackers and attackers and such. So they try to write bots that sniff out any WordPress website on the internet. They sniff out any IP, and then automatically they get to a domain name, and then they get to know immediately if this is WordPress or not. And then they get to a list of plugins or a list of users are there, and they try to poke around. So probably the instance you're talking about was fighting bots more than just fighting resources. And guess who pays the price? The resources, because bots do that. I remember even with Mura sites like that, I used to install a lot of security because I was crazy about it. Okay. But you have a lot, because I'm a Cold Fusion guy, I get to play with application.cfm or CFCN. And then now, okay, bot or not, I get to vet you first. And guess what was 90% of the attacks were like trying to poke a WP admin, which is the back back end for your smiling, Ben. So probably you've seen that in your audits or audit logs and
100%.
Yeah. So we used to write code, custom code. It's like if anything, WP admin, WP log, just kill it and nip it in the butt. I don't need it. No more resources, and from the application level itself. And sometimes we used to go to crazy to like the IS level. So I don't want to even bring it to Cold Fusion. Just kill it away because we don't have a sense of WordPress here.
Yeah, we would block by IP address to the admin pages, or by.
That's even a smarter thing.
And we were talking on a previous show. I'm pretty sure this was you and I, Ryan. I can't remember who we were talking to, but we were talking about Cloudflare, and having Cloudflare sitting in front of the site can do some degree of DDoS protection. It doesn't always kick in when you hope it would kick in, but there's like a panic button you can hit to say, please stop whatever's happening.
Yeah, the really big ones. So the team we have here at Expect Cloud, they've been part of some pretty big DDoS attacks that were more like election based. They're trying to take down certain sites because of the election a few years ago. Not this most recent one, but the one before that. And with that, they had to use they actually, there's like a Uber Cloudflare, I believe is what, and so like the super expensive Cloudflare license, they had to do that plus work with the upstream internet providers to try and block traffic. And it was like one of the biggest they've ever, actually it was the biggest they've ever seen. It was a massive attack. But that's what you get with elections and hosting and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's why you should not build any major system using WordPress. Like WordPress was meant for websites, like simple websites. And when I say simple here, I'm talking to developers, and I mean just servicing pages with maybe some advanced search or some does this clinic support this insurance or not, this kind of questions to be answered out of this website. And check my recent videos or my blog. It was built for blogging, period.
Right.
So at what point do you recommend, like, or what are your typical reasons that you recommend to move past WordPress? And then what do you, after WordPress, is it just custom? Or is it just need specific?
You can move to another CMS that handles CMS built for developers or more controlled environment, not just WordPress, not common. Maybe something like Mira, Maza, or again,
Sanity.
Hi.
I don't know if that's what you were about to mention.
Now, I would. Again, what's the purpose of this next stage? If the next stage is Shopify, for example, why people are now putting products on Shopify? Because WordPress, it has WooCommerce. You can install WooCommerce on it. But again, Shopify is built and fortified for financial transactions. Yes, there's the model of add your own products and query them, and have a lot of variances of I need this, I like this t-shirt, and I want to have it in blue and white. And this whole database definitions are nothing for any developer, but because there's a dollar amount and dollar transaction, a credit card on that site, it has to be built in a different way. And a lot of websites get hacked. WordPress is dangerous when it comes to money, by the way. When it comes
just to go on a quick tangent for a second, literally earlier today, I was listening to, I think it's the latest episode from the Changelog podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is. And they're interviewing one of the guys who's like one of the chief researchers at Shopify. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about PCI compliance. PCI compliance, for those listening, is the compliance you have to do if you handle credit card payments. And there's a new version, I guess, like PCI version 4, where they were saying that not only do you have to protect the scripts that manage the payment, but you also have to have assertions about the page that hosts the things that host the payment. And you have to be able to kind of get a SHA of all of the scripts that are being run on that page. You basically have to like completely lock stuff down so that it can't be dynamic at all. And Shopify was talking about how they're solving this by essentially doing that for you on their end, and then providing almost like a virtual DOM inside of a web worker, so that you can have access to things like DOM events without actually having access to the page. I mean, it just sounds bonkers. But I mean, like, this is the hoops that people have to jump through to make sure that fraud doesn't happen.
Everybody's growing smart, hackers and developers, and it's the uphill battle all the time.
It's so ridiculous. Like, It's so frustrating. Like, why do people do this?
Nature of the beast. Nature of the beast. Then we found people at a previous job. I found people who are actually using real credit cards for real transactions, like $1 transaction. They're running probably $21 transaction to 20 different credit cards through the services that we have on the website for the client, because they are stolen credit cards and they want to know if it's working or not, if it's blocked or not. So they're doing it. So it's a crazy battle, but hey, we're soldiers into it, and we have to face it anyways. So back to your question, Ryan, or to your point, when we should move out of WordPress, when we are serious in business, when we're handling a good amount of money that makes us afford I don't want to use the word decent, but a more fortified website. Does it have to be CMS based? Sure, why not? But maybe it's your time. You've matured enough in business and money to consider something like a headless CMS, where content has no impact on the front end except when it's engineered by a developer that know exactly what they're looking for when it comes to content and know how to collect it and know how to control it using a technology like React or something like that, where any change to the DOM can be detected. And you're going to get an ugly red error. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to proceed because I feel something wrong here. Or
interesting. It's just when the businesses, they've matured enough, they're like, okay, we're done with the WordPress. We want more. We want to get away from the bloat. We want to be able to use our data in more places. We may want to go for some mobile app or some other app or even reuse data.
Yeah, I'll tell you an example. If I'm servicing not products like Shopify or anything, nothing dangerous about a payment or a dollar amount here. I'm servicing a piece of information like my blog entry or a page that I'm delivering a course. It's just something as text and videos. But if I'm selling that to millions of people, I'm getting millions of hits. Then we're talking about a different animal. We need to consider even go to static page, like Ben was talking.
Right.
The whole content gets generated in a static HTML and serviced as HTML pages, HTML text, because beyond that, you're not going to be able to afford a database query every time somebody lands on a page.
Good problems to have, I guess, is what they say.
It makes our jobs, it makes our jobs viable. The day.
Yeah. And you can also use like Cloudflare for their caching for some of that. I know for our sister company, they do a lot because they'll send out their email blasts and they'll get hit with a bunch of traffic. So they've had to figure out how to balance. Okay, hey, what do we cache? What do we not cache? In order to provide some personal experiences for people. So it's it's interesting balance. But it's funny you mentioned like the Shopifys of the world. We don't use Shopify. We use one of their competitors, and we've had to move away from their system because of limitations. And we've just grown to where, okay, look, even at that level, we want more control of things, and our developers want to be able to really control the pages. And they're basically making headless, where they're like, okay, hey, this content's going to come from our ERP platform, and it's going to be purposed in these places within our actual product, and so they can control some of that.
The way telling us the story is that your business have matured to a point where this is not enough for me anymore, and I move on. And when you move on, you gotta engineer the next phase. So hence losing, the whole WordPress shine because it's not servicing you anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that the maturity of the business, and because for business, I mean, you got to pay for change, so it makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, hey, here's my level. When I would love to have the Porsche or whatever, but you know what? I need to be able to pay for it. So let me use my my Honda Accord for a while until and then you know what? Now I need to be up here. The business has matured some, and also I've just have the resources to be able to then fund the bigger project that I really want.
There's also a quick quickly, there's another aspect that I've witnessed through my career, which is the time aspect, the maturity, not the maturity of the business, because the business could be like fine, and if the website is fine, I don't need anything extra. It's serving its purpose. But guess what? It was built on version 5, and now we're at version 7, and we need to upgrade all the websites on the server, and it's not going to be supported anymore. It's out of support, end of life support, they call it like that. So now you have a dead website. It's there, but it's clinically dead, okay? And you need to move on, and then you need to pay for the upgrade or redo, sometimes a redo.
So this, I think, is happening at where I'm working now. I don't know much about this project, but I think there is a project that's built on WordPress, and it has some critical plugin that isn't compatible with like newer versions of WordPress. So they can't upgrade the WordPress because there's no newer version of the plugin, and it's been causing a lot of issues.
Yeah, and it brings a lot of security issues too. Yeah, I've faced that. And then redesign. Who's going to pay for that? Definitely not your time bill and not your employees, like people who work with you. A client has to pay for that. That's another aspect, Ryan. Time.
Yeah.
Can we circle back just real quick to the whole text editing part of this whole situation? Is there first of all, does every WordPress use the same WYSIWYG editor, or
no?
Can you pick a WYSIWYG editor, and is there one that you would recommend just for general use?
No, WordPress right now has its own blocks, so its own WYSIWYG editor, which is it's called content blocks, or maybe they call it just blocks, where you say add, you see the plus sign and say, what do you want to add? A paragraph or a blurb or a photo or a video? You see this granular things, and then they click add, and then it allows you, want to add a table, or want to, not even a table right now, I want to move it to the left, move it to the right, and they try to design things on your behalf. So this is the bare bones WordPress. However, not all the people you do that, at least in my sphere. They use another content builders like Elementor, like Divi, like Gutenberg, for example. Those come with their own WYSIWYGs.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that you could get a... Gotcha. Okay. I didn't know if things were like... I didn't know. Okay. That's interesting.
I'll be happy to take you, I'll put a time, let's schedule a time. I'll show you what's in the admin section of a WordPress website with Elementor and with Divi, the different, you would see like it's a drag and drop. I call it drag and drop.
Yeah.
It is amazing how much you can do with those editors. Like even timing of things as they appear on the page, any kind of cool graphic effects you can do with just those plugins.
Animation
for better or for worse, because you then can't control it. All you can do is control it through the admin.
I have a department who's only WordPress, and the developers there, I call them WordPress developers because they know WordPress.
Right.
But to be fair to them and to us here, they don't write code. The max, the level of code that they reached is I can copy and paste some CSS. You see Ben's face is like...
Sure. I understand, though. They're getting the job done.
And
it gets done amazingly, too. The clients love it. And frankly, we optimize the heck out of it. Now you see the Google, the Google page speed, the 4 gauges.
Yeah.
We make them all green. And at a point of time, we made all of them 100%. And the developer took a screenshot and said, John, this is NasimWorks.com, 100% everything. I did it once. And then an automatic update to a plugin brought it down to like 80 something. Now it's now in the orange, and then it's another optimization battle. And then I was like, that we know there's no way to do that. However, for us, the developers, when we build something with Next or Cold Fusion or something like that, we have, I call it pixel control.
Sure.
Character control, because we know a semicolon can kill the whole site. And then with that, you get 100% is commonly available to us because we have control of everything. But I'm not going to build my business on everything, a website that takes 6 months to build versus a WordPress developer that can build it in less than 6 hours.
So you mentioned page speed, and I think even when you look at light speed, one of the categories I look at is accessibility.
Yep.
So I'll use that to transition here. We have a few minutes. We have probably about 5 minutes, but I want to just kind of touch on accessibility here because we mentioned this in another show that we did. With accessibility, how are you? Because on your site, and we'll include a link to John's site here, and we'll let you mention that. Well, we mentioned at the end here, but on your website, you mentioned accessibility is something that you guys push. And when we talked about it more as far as the innovation engine and how it's been used to kind of create opportunities and new ways of looking at things for everybody, not just those who need the accessible features.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to talk your angle of it. You found the SEO benefits of it. So can you talk about what you've seen and experienced as far as when you've optimized for accessibility, how that's benefited companies for SEO?
Definitely. In order to be accessible, you need to have certain things on the website. Okay, as in technical terms, you need to make sure that like each image has an alt tag, which is the alternative things. An alt tag, which when the browser reads the image, it doesn't read what the image content, but it reads the textual representation of the image, which is the alternative text, which is shortened by alt. And what it defines, it should define what's in this picture. Okay, so this is by itself is an SEO +1 or +10 to begin with. Okay, so this is the accessibility widgets, like the one you're talking about on my website. It reads what's on that to the person with the disability, the person who is using this plugin or needs that plugin. It reads who can't really see what's in the image. It describes the image to them. So this is a +1. Another aspect, they read what's on the page, and then hence the need of a structured element on the page, like a heading. Each one is the big heading that would describe what's on the entirety of the page, and then sections of the page. Each section should have the second level of heading, which is H2 programmatically, and they will read, okay, this section that define that. So those widgets and accessibility readers can segment what's on the page to read it to someone who cannot read visually what's on the page. And once you follow those accessibility rules, we call them rules, you automatically inherited a lot of +1s in the SEO aspect. And to me, I'm so glad, Google pisses me off in so many aspects, but I'm so glad that Google considered this as a strong signal of integrity with the content of the website, hence increasing, and it gives you a lot of pluses, and increases your ranking in SEO. Why? Because this is the true sense of inclusivity. You're including a lot of people who are not, maybe you're not aware of, okay? But this is how it should be. And kudos to Google for pushing that. It's not me, just Google who pushed that. When you have an accessibility gauge, it has its own gauge, like 100%.
Yeah.
It should be 100% to begin with. Because guess what? Once you cover that, SEO is going to be at least 90%. At least.
So are there any hidden gems for accessibility that are like things that people don't normally look for that you found benefit? So beyond the H tags and some of the structure, like any other hidden gems for improving SEO with accessibility?
Color contrast.
Okay.
One aspect, for example, designers would like things to look nice, but yes, the human eye can enjoy a color palette, and when you put green on that, it's going to look nice. But the contrast is one of the elements too, like that needs to be understood. Like, for example, if I'm building a website for a senior care center, why do I put a gray text on a white background where it's very hard to read for someone my age? I'm 46, and a gray text on a white background is like, oh, okay, now I need to squint a little bit so I can read it. Why? Then, if I know my audience, I should serve them better. I put a nice contrast, not a killer contrast, and no glowing yellow or green, or marquees or flashing things,
Right.
because flashing things could trigger bad things to readers too. You see?
One thing that I've never felt comfortable with is, I think years ago, maybe this is when HTML5 came out. I can't remember which one. So it used to be in the olden days, you had your H1, H2, H3, etc. And you could only have one H1. And then at some point, when it was like the article tag and the section tag and the header tag, when those came out,
Nice.
there was this notion that you could have more than one H1 tag as long as it was like in a particular article. And for a while, I think people were starting to do that, but then I think a lot of assistive technologies push back and be like, whoa, just like, even if that's to specification, it actually makes consuming the page harder, because now we have to have more contextual information about where these H1s exist. And it just never felt right to me. But I don't know the facts around it, but if I see more than one H1 on a page, I'm like, that doesn't feel right.
I'm gonna be punished by Google too. Well, I haven't heard that before, Ben, but today I learned something new about this.
Well, don't take my word for
But
it.
it's fine, by the way, because we learned early on, before the article and aside and the main tags, but one H1 on page has been the rule, at least in my SEO practices. You get punished for having two H1s on a page, because this is misleading. You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy is, and I think it may have been Lightspeed I was looking at, or no, I think it was SEMrush. I was using the SEMrush, doing some work on the site, and they dinged us for having the title tag match the H1. I was like, isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Nah, well, this is the.
I was so confused. I was like, really? That's just what you do.
They think of it as you're not introducing something new. Google have gone crazy now when it comes to SEO, because now it understands what's in the image for you, what's in the video itself, and it understands the user experience. So you're being judged by the user experience itself, not just matching a title and H1. You're making it harder. They have to click 5 clicks in order to get to the bottom of things, where they should be actually 3. How on earth do you know about that? They have very smart algorithms. But yes, to your point, Ryan, yes, rules are changing all the time while you're playing it, my friend. That's why the SEO companies are paid a lot, because they have to comply with a lot. What was good today is bad tomorrow.
Yep. I know they'll make sometimes big fundamental changes to the way the algorithms work, and then suddenly you hear a lot of people complaining, like, oh, what's going on? Suddenly something's not working, or my page suddenly fell to page 2 of the search results.
Yeah. Tell that to the business owner who paid a developer to handle the SEO, a couple of grands, and then they left, and then suddenly they are page 20 instead of page 1, and they blame the poor guy who just did the right thing the other day, but which is not the right thing anymore.
Well, I was listening to some interview the other day, and they were talking about how people are going to have to start, or might start, thinking about AI optimization. Like, how can you make your site more accessible to AI, so that it's more likely to pull your suggestions into prompts. I mean, that's, I don't know how I feel about all the AI stuff yet, but
we've already started doing that.
Actually, interesting.
I'm not going to go into on a public broadcast what our techniques are and what we're doing for optimization for AI.
Sure.
But yeah, we're looking at that and how to make sure we show up in places. So it's
fascinating.
It's a new world. You have to, and it's different. It's different. It's not the same as Google.
Well, there's stuff that I don't understand at all, though. People will talk about how, not to make this about AI for a second, but people will talk about how you can put in some crazy random string of characters, and it will somehow fundamentally change the way the AI responds. And I mean, like, it's math, I guess. I don't understand the math behind it, but I don't even know how people find this stuff. It's just bonkers to me. None of
It
it makes
reminds
any
me of
sense.
cheat codes and that we used to do in games back in the
Yeah,
day.
yeah. It's very
Yeah.
much like a
Yeah.
cheat code, exactly.
Yeah.
Up, down, left, right, A, B, select,
What
start,
else?
whatever it was.
We used to call it like the Easter, like
The
the
Easter
egg hunt.
eggs.
Oh,
Easter
egg,
eggs, Easter eggs. Like I'm gonna have an Easter egg on the website. You just click on this corner, and then suddenly gonna get a picture of a bunny jumping up and down. And
Yo,
I
there's
don't
gotta
like that.
be
I don't like Easter eggs.
WordPress plugins for Easter eggs.
Of course,
Yeah.
I used to do it early on websites, but I stopped because, it's an unknown thing, which
Yeah.
it's not a preferred way of thinking and building websites.
Let me ask you something completely random and totally off topic.
Mhm.
So my cousin was just in Egypt,
Ooh.
and he was sending pictures of he and his girlfriend were there, and they were riding on camels.
Uh-huh.
Is riding on a camel as common as, say, riding in a horse in the US? Like, if I asked someone randomly, have you ever ridden on a camel? Like, there'd be a pretty good chance they'd say yes.
If it was someone else but you, Ben, I would have brought in my Egyptian sarcasm. It's like, yeah, we go to work on a camel, Truth is, no. I grew up going to the countryside when I was a little kid. So that's where only I used to see camels. And you can only see them by the pyramids because it's just a touristic scenery.
Okay, gotcha.
And one more thing. I saw a camel by the beach one day, and it was fun to hold my son when he was just like a year old.
Yeah.
But the height of the camel is twice the height of the horse, if not even
That's
more than that.
we
It's
were
scary
remarking on that.
and the way the camel kind of leans down, when they lean, you lean from a higher position, and you feel like I'm gonna kiss the earth with my, from this height, and you're not controlling it. It's a long beast, and it kneels down fast, and you feel like, oh my God, I'm gonna fall on my face. So it needs that too. But no, we rarely see camels even in Cairo, which is crowded, but the pyramids are so close to civilization. Just another thing, because I see that coming. You don't have to drive for 2 hours in the desert to see the pyramid.
Yeah.
You could have the hotel. Probably you saw your cousin hotel just adjacent to the pyramids.
Really?
But yeah, they make it's a touristic thing when people get to see the pyramids and get a sense of what was back in the old days. Maybe. Pharaohs used to have camels, and camels to an Egyptian.
It makes me sad to have a hotel next to the pyramids. I don't know.
Hey, I'm Egyptian, and I've been to the pyramids. I drove by them like hundreds of times, and they're still majestic to me.
Yeah, I'm
majestic to me. And I've been inside the Grand Pyramid like many times, so many times as a kid and as an adult, and they're still majestic. There's something magical about that.
I can imagine, or I can't imagine.
But the camel experience, it needs to be controlled, and it's they beg you to ride a camel, and they overcharge you. Probably heard the stories, but to me, I would not ride a camel anymore. I'm getting old, and my bones are going to punish me if I fell off, and really happens. But it was a quite experience, But I rode horses a very few times too, and I think a cowboy is a whole different than a camel boy, if you call it that. Camel boy. I just came up with something here too.
All right, we're gonna have to hashtag camel boy.
No, my God.
All right, John, thank you very much. It's been great, kind of going through CMS options.
Yes, thank you.
We could go on for a while because there's even another angle of AI with CMSs and website builders that we didn't even touch on. I will leave one anecdote on that, is that I tried that for someone else to do the Wix AI generator for a website, and I've never been so disappointed in AI ever. And Ben will tell you, I'm AI on AI, all in on AI.
He's all in.
But I was so disappointed. I'm like, this is terrible. I mean,
I'll tell you some secret sauce off off camera here about when we go off camera, I'll tell you how you can literally get a website built in a few days. And this website, listen to that, Ben. It's React-based website, like Next.js, React components, and the whole 9 yards built with AI. Like in it could be in hours too.
That's crazy.
And, you see, this is the thing I was expected. Exact word, crazy.
Yeah,
However,
yeah.
it needs to be like in the presence of a doctor, in the presence of a developer.
Yeah.
The developer control thing, because AI on itself, it's going to take you to the bottom
All
of
right, so John, how can people, if they want to, if they have extra questions, they want to learn about your experience with CMSs, how can they find you?
on my own website. Just go to nassimworks.com, or you're gonna find a chat box there. You can chat with. Funny enough, this was built in hours too, and you can get back to me. You just go to nassimworks.com. You're gonna find all my contact information right there. My email. You can email me at info@nassimworks.com or john@nassimworks.com. And Nassim is Nessim for Mary, because I have to spell that one. Hey, let me play this SEO show off thing. Just Google Nassim Works, or John Nassim, John space Nassim. You're gonna find the lacrosse guy. I'm not the lacrosse guy. I'm the bold faces, bald, egg-shaped head guy.
It must be nice.
On my website.
It must be nice having a unique name. You can Google Ryan Brown, and there's like 4,000 of them in the yeah. Anyway, John, thank you very much for joining us. Ben, as always, it's been a pleasure. I'll actually get to see you in person again next week.
Absolutely.
John, I don't know if you're going to the CF Summit, but there's a free CF Summit hosted by Carasoft next Wednesday.
Is that in DC? The DC one?
They say DC, but it's Reston, Virginia.
Yeah,
but
this is close. Northern Virginia is a tri-state. It's a DC metro area with Maryland, DC, and Virginia. Yes. If you're going to be there, I won't miss, seeing you.
This will be your chance. Yeah, this will make up for the time where you locked your keys in the car and you couldn't go, or you got sick.
I get a dose of cold fusion.
There you go.
Free t-shirt too.
Others, if you're around next Wednesday in the DC area, come. You can Google Cold Fusion Summit East. And find all the details there, but we'll also include it in the show and stuff. And you can find any of us, and we'll talk about it. So anyway, John, thank you very much for joining us. Ben, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Indeed.
And as I still have yet to be creative on this one, so I'm going to steal Ben's. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.